what is like query editor, that kind of stuff. Also, we compare the database class and DML operations. So I ask that question a lot, so I'm not gonna ask that one, but I am just gonna ask that, can you guys give me a couple of examples about the governor limits and what is governor limit? This is from yesterday. We are gonna continue with the test classes today.
As Apex runs in a multi-tenant environment,
Okay.
so Apex runtime engine strictly enforces some limits. This is because runaway Apex code or process don't monopolize shared resource.
Okay. For example, I don't want you guys to reply the answers like this way.
Like,
It is so obvious, like she's reading it from somewhere, right? Maybe it is a picture from yesterday, something like that. That is good. You are just keeping them. Anyway, I'm gonna share these PowerPoints, but like just try to use your word and just insert some of the keywords like multi-tenant. And like you can just mention that like what's gonna happen if you exceed the limits.
if
It's
we
gonna break
exceed it, yeah, sorry.
No worries, my bad. It's gonna break the DML operation, and it's not gonna implement the process.
Is it DML operation or it is just gonna throw us an exception?
Runtime.
Runtime
exception, yes. And also like you can mention that like each and every governor limits, like they limit the count of the Apex transaction we said yesterday, right? So each and every transaction go through this governor limit. That is why what we need to do, we need to reduce the Apex transaction. Because if I just try to insert only one record, this is a transaction. If I try to insert like 200 records together with the batch class, this is one transaction also. Instead of like going through one by one, if we just do it with the like batch classes, we can go through less transaction. In that way, it's not gonna try to check 200 of them like one by one. And when we use the batches, it is still gonna stay in the governor limits, but on the one go, we are gonna insert a bunch of records. Not only a single record. So do you guys remember any of the examples from yesterday?
Talking about the limits,
Yes, governor limits.
I could
For
say,
example, let me ask you guys and you guys can guess. Like, how many SOQL queries we can use in a synchronized and for the asynchronous also?
for both,
They
No.
were same, I guess.
No.
Yeah, some of the values were same, but not this one.
Yeah.
Total number of the SOQL queries for the synchronized, it is 100,
100, yes.
and for asynchronous, it is
200.
200.
200.
When we do one SOQL query, how many total records we can retrieve or we can fetch or catch, whatever.
50,000.
50,000 for both of them.
Yeah.
What about the total number of SOSL we can query?
For both. 20.
It was very less than SOQL.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Any guess?
20.
20, for both of them.
Yeah.
When we do a SOSL query, how many total records we can retrieve? Somebody sent the answer.
2,000.
Yes. Okay. So since we already talked about like the database classes, can you guys please write me down the syntax for the database class as a result?
Database dot save result.
Okay.
And for other operations, database dot insert and parentheses.
Okay. Inside the parentheses, is it important something or like you
I
can
think-
put whatever you want?
Oh, yesterday from your slides, I think there was no information inside parentheses, but I think it's up to use case, up to requirement.
So what was the like basic logic? Why do we use the database classes? One magic word I'm looking for.
Partially.
Yes, we are looking for, if we are looking for partially success or failure, we need to use the database classes. Because when we compare database class with the DML operations, that was the biggest difference, right? To provide that difference, which means like if we are looking for any partially success, in that syntax, database that like save result, you can give a value, make it array, make it equal, database dot insert, open the parenthesis, put the list, whatever the list is, then comma and say true or false.
False.
False. Because if it will be true,
There is no
there is
difference.
no difference between DML insert operation and database dot insert operation. Okay, after recalling that, so we talk about the exception. What was the exception? Just 2 words.
Runtime error.
That's correct. And like what we need to do if we don't want to get any runtime error on the DML operations.
Try and catch.
Okay, then how do we need to write the try and catch below?
Mhm.
We just need to put our DML operation inside the try block, right?
Correct.
After then, we need to write the catch block. There is something fixed over there, like we have to write it down.
Between parentheses.
You
Okay,
told DML operation inside the try parentheses, maybe?
Yes. And system debug in catch block.
For
okay,
show up the
I'm looking
error
for
message.
correct.
Okay. And we need to insert after the catch DML exception. And then we need to mention that get message method inside that system debug to get an error message.
E is just an example, right? I
Just
mean,
an example, you can
you
make
can-
it X or
anything.
A, something like that. E they are using for the exception, so that's why it's E. All right, after a little bit recalling the yesterday's lesson, let me share my screen. 1, 2, 3. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So we are gonna start with the test classes today. Until now, we just write it down some test classes. Since we are in the progress, we are still learning. But at least can you give me a couple of reasons, like why do we need to write down the test classes?
Before the deploy operation or code to the organization, we want to make sure our code works properly.
That's correct. For example, Chilem is not gonna be able to join today's lesson because they have a deployment. What does it mean? Like they worked on the sandboxes, they prepared some codes, they did some unit testing. After then, they did some before go to the other sandbox, they did another testing. At the end, when it is time to deploy it, which means it is everything like the coding and whatever the structure they prepare, it is gonna go to the user. It's gonna go to the production. So they call it deployment. Deployment, like you can remember from here, like what's happening sometimes on the news, you can hear about that for the military reasons, like US will deploy like 40,000 soldiers to Germany. So what are they doing? They are preparing some stuff. They are getting ready for it. And they are just sending it to the user side, to the field. The actual field which is gonna be used. In this case, in the computer world, like it is gonna reach to the user. And when it is like being used from the user, since then they can get some extra problems, they can solve it, but they have to follow up all this deployment online, which means while they are deploying, they are just trying to don't miss anything on behind. So in here, before we do any deployment, we are just trying to make sure we have a clean code. It's a quality code, and it is covering at least how much?
75%.
75% code coverage,
But
but we need to focus 100% because this 75 is the minimum percentage. That's why we are doing the test classes. We are writing down the test classes. Now, so while we are explaining, we are writing down the test classes in the Apex class. And like, we are just checking if they are working as expected. We can check them for the single or bulk records. And we need to check for the positive and negative sides.
What does that mean? Positive and negative.
So
else.
if you have an if condition, for example, I don't know if I have it handy. I'm just checking one of our code. Okay, this is the one we were writing down yesterday, right? So if I have any if condition, I need to cover both of the ifs, like on my trigger handler, for example, one of them about the like updating the shipping address or copy billing to shipping, something like that. I'm just trying to find it. Yes, this one. So even if we do any insert or update on the account, we would like to check if this checkbox is checked, then we would like to see like it is copying all the account billing address into the shipping address. What is the condition here? So it's supposed to work for insert or update. So if I have an if condition here, this is the only true portion of it, right?
Yes.
So it's supposed to, our test class supposed to cover the like positive condition, which is true. And also it's supposed to cover if it is not true. Does it make sense now? Which means, for example, if it is not an insert, if our alt map is not equal to null, which means if we have an existing condition. So we are covering it here.
And what for, I don't know if it's for this example, but yesterday Sanjay said we should do like 2 separate tests for this one, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
For this
That's why.
one, what we did, for example, we did for the insert. This is for insert. And the same code we used, except this portion, for the update. So this one is just covering this part. And the other one covers only this part. Because while we are testing, we need to think like both of the ways. That's why, like, while you are describing, like, why we are doing the writing down a test class, we are just trying to make sure our code is working as expected. We can check the single and bulk records. We need to think about the positive and negative sides while we are writing any test class. Even they are saying that we need to think about the restricted user, which means if any profile doesn't have some of the access, we need to think about it and we need to write down our code accordingly. In that way, we can check if they are receiving an error message or not. Think about, like, we have a second user, right? And our second user doesn't have the system admin, and some of the account records are like having the OWD as a private. If they would like to access, they are gonna get any error or not. Think about this way. So you should mention about single records. It's supposed to cover the single records or bulk records. We need to take care of the positive and negative scenarios. And also we should cover the restricted users. These 5 things, they are all coming from here. This is the link Sanjay shared before. If you guys want, I can share again, because I'm gonna touch up this one a lot. I'm gonna come back to that one. So you can just follow it up from there for now. It is gonna be more than this. So we should know this 5 step while we are describing about the test classes. How to define the method. So since we did a couple of examples, what did we do? We write down something like this, and we call this annotation. We need to write a like is test annotation, priority our class, and priority our method, where we are writing down this on our test class. And also our method is starting with the static keyword and goes on with the void, because it's not like anything to return. We are just putting the method name here. Inside our method, we need to create a test data. We need to perform the DML operation. And then we need to apply the assert to validate the result, which means we are comparing the expected result and the actual result. In here, we are just doing like, what is the DML operation, insert or update? In here, we are just think about if it is an insert or update, whatever we are writing down in the anonymous windows, we are just writing down under here. So we can say we are just trying to define 3 steps inside our method, test method. And if you notice that, like, for example, where is my developer console? For example, we are writing down this much code, right? Inside the handler class. And whatever we are writing down here, it is like this much to cover here. Because what's happening here, we are starting with the isTest annotation before our method. And then we are trying to define 3 steps here, putting the code, whatever we were putting inside our anonymous window, on the create test data portion. On the second portion, we are just inserting like our DML operation here. And then on the third part, we are just comparing them. Like I should see this one, and this is the one I see. If I cannot see, if they are not same here, before the comma and after the comma, then I need to see this message. I'm gonna come to the start test, like end test, stop test. Any question until this point? At least we need to like make this thing clear in our mind, because this is the syntax we need to use. I can delete this one if it is confusing you guys. Any question? No?
No, good for now.
Okay. So these are the steps we already did, so it should be clear, but sometimes it's hard to remember. So we are saying that our test class needs to cover at least 75% of the code. While it is doing that, how they can calculate this thing? They are just checking the number of the covered lines. Say covered lines are, say in total we have like say 70 lines. Or make it 50 to make it easy to calculate. And we covered like 15 of them. This is the covered lines. And this is the total line we have. So how many percent we covered here? 30% only. Right? While we are calculating this, for example, we said we covered like 15 lines, but some of the lines and some of the things, they are not gonna be inside the code coverage. For example, if we have any comments, it is gonna skip that line. If you have anything like this, it is not gonna try to like check this line. It is excluded. It is not included. If there is any blank lines, it is just gonna skip that one. It's not gonna calculate that. If you are using any system debug statements, it is gonna exclude from the lines to check. If you have any curly brackets, it is gonna be excluded. That's why, like, while you are writing down your code, if you just like write it down an if condition, and inside this if condition, like open parenthesis here, closing parenthesis here, curly parenthesis here, they are all in one line. This is one line while checking the code coverage. But if you make this one break down, most of the time we do, right? Instead of closing it here, we are just closing it maybe here. And we are typing down some stuff here. You are just checking this if condition, but you are covering more lines, right? And when you cover more lines, then this is gonna increase. and your percentage will be increased. Does it make sense?
Yes.
For example, Sanjay didn't mention about these kind of stuff, but when we put here is test, it is just skipping this portion also. Since we are putting this is test annotation, like beginning of the class, right? Right here. This class also be skipped while you are doing the testing because this is your test class. It's not looking to cover anything here. All right. So sometimes they ask these kind of stuff, like the great source for this is that link which I shared with you guys. That is the official Salesforce website, Apex for the Apex developers. It is written over there. I'm gonna show you in a couple minutes. Any question here? This is the is test also. It is excluded. Because sometimes they are asking these kind of details. So can you guys just click on that link and open that?
It's open on me.
Everyone can see this page, right?
Yes, understanding testing in Apex.
Yeah.
So I divided these pages and I just like try to make it understandable by coloring them. If you see here why we need to test in Apex, like it is a key to success if our code is working properly or not. And then, oh, this is the thing I don't like. Okay. We are just checking the first part. You can follow up from that link. So there are two ways of testing an application. One of them is from the user interface, UI. Right now, we all know what the UI is and like how to test from there. That is the testing we are doing manually. But there is another way, like, and it is mentioning that like, if you do any testing from the UI side, user interface will not catch all of the use cases. That's why they are doing the test on the backend. Other ways to test for bulk functionality, which is up to 200 records, can be passed through your code if it is invoked using SOAP API or VS Standards set controller. You are gonna see this one like on the Aura components. No need to worry about it. But there is a way to make your test with the bulk functionality. What was the bulk? Like bunch of records together. And this bunch of records, they can go up to 200 records if you are using SOAP API. Just say that it is gonna be enough. No need to mention about this. So, or when they ask you something like that, you can basically say there are two ways to test our code. Like we can just do the testing from the UI side, but it's not so efficient because we cannot catch all the like use cases. That's why we need to do the testing on the backend using the bulk functionality. Just say like this, it is gonna be enough. And what is the bulk functionality? What we are doing here, like we are just creating, for example, like bunch of records instead of one record. And Sanjay is always mentioning that we need to create bulk records, right? Bulk. So if we put here 100, then we are gonna like insert, if it is an insert, we are gonna insert like 100 records or 99 according to this I. In here, it is gonna be like, if we put here 200, then we are gonna insert 200. Aslı, you were asking something?
Is there any minimum number to call it bulk? Like if it's just 2 records, is it bulk?
More than one, I can say.
Is it more than one? Okay.
Yeah. But when you use bulk, basically you are just trying to use more than 2. Like because you are just trying to insert more records and test all of them. So that's why when you say bulk, you can just assume like there is no specific rule for that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can just use 5 like Sanjay did. So the other steps like unit tests, these are unit tests, like there are different kind of tests. Çilem knows better than me. The only thing I can say unit test is whenever you write down any code, at the end of the code, if you are writing down a test class for that code, this is unit testing. Because if you bring the units together, maybe you are gonna build something, right? Each and every code, after each and every code, if you are typing any test class, that is unit testing. So it says unit tests must cover at least 75% of your Apex code. And all those tests must complete successfully. Note the following. It is giving the details now. It says, when deploying Apex to a production organization, each unit test in your organization namespace is executed by default. Calls to system.debug are not counted as part of Apex code coverage. Now it is giving us the exceptions, which we already mentioned this one on the slide. System.debug. If you see system.debug, that is not counted for the code coverage. It is excluded. Test methods, test classes. Why test methods and test classes, they are like not counted for the code coverage? Because what did we say? If you have is test annotation, it is not gonna be counted. So since this class have is test annotation in the beginning, this is not going to count for the code coverage. Since this method, it has isTest annotation, this is not going to be count for the code coverage. So when we say that 75%, it is not including these kind of stuff. Because when you explain like why do we need the test class, after then we need to cover at least 75%, then they can ask you this detail. Like, is this code coverage like including everything? They can just try to ring a bell. If you know there is exceptions like these are, then you can say, oh yeah, like there are some stuff, they are not gonna be counted for the code coverage. What are they? System.debug, test methods, test classes, comment lines, blank spaces, and also like curly parentheses. They are not. And then while only 75% of your Apex code must be covered by the test, do not focus on the percentage of the code that is covered. Instead, make sure that every use case of your application is covered, which is 100%, including positive and negative cases, as well as bulk and single records. This is the one we were just talking about in the beginning. So if they want, they can ask like millions of questions from this, because each and every sentence itself, it is like more details. But what I did, I just tried to keep them highlighted, and I just tried to pick some stuff as a like keyword. Like I can remember 75% from here. I can say, at least I can remember a couple of them, like what are not including the code coverage. And also like, since it's supposed to be at least 75%, but we need to focus the like 100%. And also we need to think about like all the positive and negative cases. Make sure we are covering all the single and bulk records. And also we should think about the restricted users. Every trigger must have some test coverage. So what was happening here in our like this one, this test, account handler trigger test class, we were writing down this and we were checking here like what it was showing us, like 8%, 9%, something like that. I don't know mine. It is 11. So for this, it says each and every trigger must have some test coverage. Like it doesn't supposed to be like 100%, but it's supposed to be coverage for each and every trigger. That's why like when you have any trigger commented out here, they are not gonna be including inside the code coverage. Any question until now? No? Okay. So what do you guys remember from the first part? Oh, I missed the last sentence. All classes and triggers must compile successfully. So if you think about the steps, this is the first step. It is including lots of excludings inside, and then second and third. What do you guys remember from the first part? Are you guys listening, or are you guys watching TV something? Or
Listening.
Okay.
Mostly.
So most important part, we need to focus on the bulk recording. And this recording with is notation, is test notation. It's not going to implement in our org. And all the,
we should just say code coverage over there.
yeah, at least 75, but we need to focus 100%
Okay.
for test coverage. Bulk functionality, up to 200 records for the bulk functionality, at least 75% coverage. What else?
While we are writing down any like test class, what do we need to consider about? All the positive and negative cases.
Yes. Like if else condition,
Yes.
if we check in the if condition, we have to check else condition as well.
And also we need to think about single and bulk records you already mentioned.
Yes.
And like, is there any exception for the code coverage?
Like curly braces, commas, that
Not
kind of
not comma, comments.
comments, curly braces, comments, parentheses, these symbols, let me say symbols about it, it's covered automatically. It's not going to be, let's say, testable.
Which symbols?
The curly braces. What was it? You mentioned curly braces.
Is
Uh,
test annotations. That's
is
why
test-
like all the test methods and test classes will not be included to the code coverage.
Correct.
All right. So we can continue from the second part. If you guys have any question, just shoot. If I can answer, I can. Otherwise, I can search for it. So if the code uses conditional logic, execute each branch. What does it mean? Conditional logic. This is something you guys use each and every time.
Is
Is
it
it
if
like-
else?
Yes.
I-
Yes. It is the if else. Which means, so for example, what we said, we need to think about and we need to cover the like the positive
Positive
and
and
negative scenarios. Basically, it is saying that. Oops, wrong one. It says if there is a if condition, you need to cover else condition also. Make calls to methods using both valid and invalid inputs. So if you are trying to test, like for example, like what we did, I think Sanjay didn't go through that much details because we were struggling to understand what we did. For example, if it is asking us like, in here, I'm gonna give you the example as this. So this condition, this use case depends on this, right? Even if it is an insert or update. Copy billing to shipping field, checkbox field, should be checked. In that way, this code will run and it is gonna like take the billing address and put into the shipping address. So we should check if this is checked or not. The condition, it says this checkbox should be checked, which means the Boolean value for this field should be true. We need to check the false also. When we give the false value on our test class, where is that? Right here. When we give the false value here, if we are not getting any like error here, which means there's a problem. Right? For example, in Aslı's condition, it was different because as a default, she made it false. So he had to replace this one with the false to check if it is working or not. But she's supposed to check the true condition also to see if it is not working or working. That's why testing something, I can say, for me, it is harder than like writing it down that code. Because you need to think about all the possibilities. And you need to like write something to cover each and every possibilities. That's why it is hard. This is just my opinion. But if you ask Shlem, it is easy. So, complete successfully without throwing any exceptions, unless those errors are expected and caught in a try-catch block. So, why do we use the try-catch block? You can easily say that if we are expecting any error, because we know, like, we are trying to insert here 5 records, right? We are just trying to insert 5 records. And say we know 3 of them, like, they don't have the like required fields. What you can expect from here? That 3 records will be failed. If you are expecting some of the fields or some of the records, I should say, some of the records will be failed, you are expecting that, then you need to use the try and catch block. This is the same thing like we were talking like maybe half an hour ago. So the purpose on the test class, you are trying to cover, like complete successfully without throwing any exceptions. But if you are expecting any errors, you should use the try and catch block. Then we are coming through the system.assert method, which we were using. Do you guys have any question until here? I'm just trying to go line by line.
I'm good.
Okay.
Me too.
So the use of the system.assert method to prove that code behaves properly. What does it mean? Which means if your code behaves like you expected or not. That's why we are using this system.assert. It has like several methods, and we are just using the system.assert equals to check this is our expectation until this point, and this point is gonna be the actual value. If these two same, we are good. If there is a difference, then we are gonna get an error. And if we get any error, we can just define that error, like what you like to see over there. So system.assert is done. Use the run as method, which we didn't use yet, to test your application in different user contexts. Like if you are using the same method for different user, you can use this run as method. If you ask me like how to use it right now, I don't remember. Because while I was learning, I didn't like go this much detail and all this stuff. I searched and I studied. Like basically when they ask me any question about the test classes, I was so good to explain them theoretically, but if they ask me to write it down, no, nothing. But I really prepared for this. At least like as a theoretical, I didn't put any gap. It says exercise the bulk trigger functionality. Use at least 20 records in your test. Aslı was asking like at least what it should be. According to Salesforce, it should be at least 20. Which means while you are writing down and trying to create some bulk data, you should make it 20 here. This is Salesforce suggests.
What is the difference between creating one record or 20? We are not creating anyways in test class.
Basically, you are creating and after the test, it is disappearing. Think about that way because you will never see on the UI side. But I think they are just trying to increase the possibility to give an error. When
Maybe we had a rule or something.
Yes, yes. And also it is mentioning that use the order by keywords to ensure that the records are returned in expected order. We have never done something like this yet, which means they are not checking only if the records are like they are created as expected only, but also if they are in the expected order. They would like to see that also. But in the reality, I'm not sure if everyone used this. But this is another keyword. If you want, we can ask Sanjay, but he can show us at least once for run as and this one. Not assume that record IDs are in sequential order. Record IDs are not created in ascending order unless you insert multiple records with the same request. For example, if you create an account A and receive this record ID, then create B, the ID of account B may or may not be sequential higher, which means like it can go like what is after the T. If they are just going like A, B, C, D, you can say like it is following an order. But while you are creating this, you should not expect it is gonna go through in a order. You don't need to mention anything like while you are explaining this test stuff, but this is another data. Set up the test data. Create the necessary data in test classes. So the tests do not have to rely on data in a particular organization. Whatever the necessary data you needed, just use that one. it is asking you to do that, like create all the test data before you calling them with the test.start that method, start test method. So what we are doing here, until here, we are just creating the test data. And what Salesforce suggests us, they are saying that just create all the test data before you start test.start test method. That's what we are doing. So when we read all these details, does it making more sense what we are doing on the test classes, or is it helping or not to understand it? Or is it too much? Or is there anyone over there?
I'm
Is it
here.
too much? Is it too much? A little bit for me, maybe, but it's okay.
Yeah, it is too much detail.
Yeah.
That's why what I did, for example, because if you don't say that, if you say it is not a lot, then I'm gonna be surprised.
Yeah.
That's why I just try to like get the important one for me to say in the interview.
Mhm.
Because if I try to read everything from here, like they are gonna say how it is possible anyway. But at least I should mention some of the important stuff. Like this part is important according to me, because you are explaining why you are writing down the test code and what are not included on the code coverage, what should be the code coverage. And then you are saying that some of the methods we have, like system.assert, or like you are saying that we need to use the bulk functionality. You can mention about the order by or run as method. You can skip that one. At least you should say this one, which we all do. That kind of stuff. So you can find some of the stuff for yourself and you can just study on that. Just try to give them something, because when they ask you what is the test class, and if you are gonna be quiet, then it's not gonna be good. Because I'm not sure, but most of my interviews, I received a question from the test class. Even on the phone, they ask me, like my current company right now I'm working. Normally, they are asking these type of questions on the technical interviews. Nothing else. But when they call me from the HR, I think somebody gave some questions to the HR, and she asked me like the test classes. What should be the test coverage? And what should be like, what is included, what is not? When you say some stuff, they are feeling good and you are going through the next step. On the phone call, she asked me. And I was prepared this one earlier. I just read a couple of them, not all of them. I just mentioned about the method names. I just mentioned the coverage percentage. That's all. And it was enough because she doesn't even know what she's asking, because she's working in the HR. But she has a question and she has some answer over there. All right, that was extra. So, since tests don't commit, you don't have to delete any data because they are not in your actual org. They are just for the test purposes. So from here, I think this line will be enough. And then never test your entire application in a single test. It's not gonna happen because even for like 4 or 5 lines here, we are just creating this whole thing. So if you try to test all application, which means I don't know how many code you have, if you just try to cover everything in a single test, that's not gonna be good, and I don't think it's gonna work. All right, so the other parts I should show you guys. These are like I added to the slide. These are from the Salesforce, that document, Apex developer guide, and that restricted user is right here. And also, I just put, sometimes what are they doing? They are just asking the definition, or they are just asking like, what is test.start test? What is like test.is running test? That kind of stuff. That's why I just inserted these methods here. We are using isTest annotation. You guys all know we are just putting this one prior to the class name and method name. Define the classes or methods like they are just for the testing purposes. Test.is running test method. This one return true if the currently executing code was called by code contained in a test method. Otherwise, it's gonna be false. It's gonna turn true if currently executing code was called by code. It is really hard to say it, but it is what it is. If that current code is called by another code, this is gonna be true. That's what they are trying to say. We know this one. Test actually begins, initialize the variables, set up data before it. We are doing the setup, and then we are starting the test. Get a fresh set of governor limits for the remainder of the test until you call test.stop test. So right now, I don't know if yesterday Sanjay explained this, but the main purpose here, refreshing your governor limits. When you are refreshing your governor limits, right here. And it is checking until here, until you stop your test. In that way, you are staying in the limit. Think about like the batch classes we mentioned, right? We are writing down inside the batches to insert bunch of records together, staying under the governor limits. If we do it for a single record, what's gonna happen? Of course, it's gonna be under the governor limits, but it is gonna check again and again for 200 records. Instead of that, we are just using the batch classes or bulk records. So the main purpose to using test.start test, actually start the testing, and like you supposed to set up your test data. You should create your test data before this start test method, and it is gonna refresh your governor limits. For what? Until your test stop test method. Okay, so time is almost up. So let me finish this one, then we can stop here. We can continue tomorrow. System.run as, this is a change user context to either an existing user or a new user. Changing the context. All of the users record sharing is then enforced. I don't remember this, like how to use actually. We can ask this one also, Sanjay, if you guys want to. Is test, see all data if it is true. So if we use this, use on a class methods in exceptional cases where there are S objects that doesn't allow the DML operation, like the price book creation. So it is testing the all data, I can say. When you are using if, like that case, if you cannot use any S objects, like it is not allowing any DML operations like insert, update, whatever it is. If you cannot do that, then you are using see all data. This is another example for the syntax, but you can use the Sanjay's syntax. I already put that one on the slides. Do you guys have any question?
I'm good.
No.
It looks like we covered only 1 or 2 pages, but they are all details and they are all important. So I thought this way it will be useful, but you can just use that link and you can just create your own. It's totally up to you. I am just looking for, where did I send that? Not this one. This one. So it is under the understanding testing in Apex and what to test. It is giving some examples for the unit testing. It is explaining the like test data. Whenever you click, it's gonna take you another like very deep stuff. Like this. This is the is test see all data. Loading the data. Sometimes it is really complicated when you try to understand just by reading. Instead of that, we are doing practice here, and each and every time we are just trying to understand over the examples. I think this way is easy, but it is up to you. This is the source. You can read as much as you can. If you guys don't have any question, we can just wrap it up here and we can continue tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you guys in a couple of minutes in Sanjay's class. Thank you so much for your time.